Aaron, you see who's here today? Morning. Okay. If you want to send to the group. 35, 30, 36, 36B. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. It's sent to the group that is written. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and honor to welcome back Mr. Haber to the class. We're learning Berachos. We're in the sixth parak, 36B. We're on the first, right before the wide lines, palpably. We're up to palpably. Everyone have it? 36B, right before the wide lines. Two lines before the palpably. And pepper, they translate as peppercorns. It's a pepper, and we're talking about, and it's a spice. And the question is, when it's in this stage of spice, is it considered a food? Is it really considered normal to eat this type of food or not? And that will determine whether we have a bracha. Good morning, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Good morning, Rabbi.
Mr. Haber is back.
Wow, welcome back, Mr. Haber. We missed you.
Wow, I missed you too. Where are
How
you?
are you? Good to have you.
Where are you?
I'm in Long Island.
Okay, but you're a student of the rabbi. You're right here. Good.
That's right.
God bless you.
The rabbi was always mentioning you. You know, different case, Rabbi. Different case, different rules, different law.
Different case, different laws. That's right.
That's right. We learned that from you, Mr. Haber. It's good to have you back.
Good to see you, Mike.
Likewise.
Okay.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning, Mike. Okay. So here we got this pepper. What is the bracha? Is there a bracha on palpably? That's the Gemara's question. So everyone have the case? It's called palpably. So Rav Sheshes says shehako.
Sorry, Rabbi, what is it? What is it, palpably?
Palpably is a certain type, it's a pepper, it's a certain type of spice. They translate it as a peppercorn. It's a type of food. They're not eaten plain. They're generally not eaten plain. It's not the general pepper like a green pepper and a red pepper that we eat plain. We make a bori priadama on pepper. These are peppers. This is the actual more of a spice. It's not really eaten raw, and therefore there is a discussion whether you could you have to say a bracha at all on this type of food or not. So that's what it is. It's not something that you'll find in your supermarket on the shelf to eat in the eating section. Maybe that you've with the vegetables you'll find in the spices section, so to speak. So now this is called pilpuli. It wouldn't make it could be ground. It could be in its original stage, but it's not something that you will eat. You will eat whether it's full or whether it's ground. Maybe if you would mix it with other things, like many spices. When you mix spices with other things, we got an echo. Somebody just joined in. I don't know. Okay, no problem. So that's what the Gemara. That's the story with this. It's not. So that's the question of this pilpuli. So Rav Sheshes says shehako. Rav Sheshes says you'll say a shehako on this. pepper, even though I mean, he's not going to give you the normal bracha of hadama on this, because this definitely could be, it's not the normal way that it's eaten. This pepper could be improved in certain ways, and therefore that's not going to, it's not going to, he's not going to give it a bracha bor pri hadama, but he'll give it a shahako. And we found this concept earlier. If you have a food, that the food could be improved, and it's not made to be eaten in that state, you would not make the bracha bor pri hadama on something that's made to be eaten, let's say when it's cooked. If you have a vegetable and you don't eat it raw, and it's only eat it, let's say you only eat it in its cooked stage. So if you can eat it raw, you would not say a hadama, because it's not, the fruit is not made to be eaten in that raw state. So too, in this state, this type of pulpuli, it's not really meant generally to be eaten in this
Morning, Rabbi.
state. Good morning, Yosef. And therefore, you would not say hadama, because it's not the normal way of it's not, the fruit is not made to be eaten in that state, in that raw state of this peppercorn. And therefore, you would not say hadama on it. So what does he say? He says, since you're benefiting, you feel you're benefiting, you're eating it, enjoying this, whatever, even though it's not in its proper state, you would say bracha. He holds it, you're not allowed to benefit without a bracha. And he holds you're benefiting, you're actually eating it. You feel you want to eat this food, even though it's not the common way to eat this, but you'll still have to make a shahako. That's one opinion, right? And the second opinion, which seems to be the halacha, because there's a letter on top of this opinion, Rava says, lo klum. You don't make a bracha at all. This is not something that the Chachamim instituted the mitzvah of saying a bracha, because you're not eating, it's not called a normal eating. Just like we said, if you go ahead and you eat medicine, you don't make a bracha on medicine. It's not a normal eating, that's not food. So this is a spice. It's not meant to be eaten in this fashion. It's not meant to be eaten in this, as a raw spice. And therefore, they didn't institute a bracha for this type of food. That is the opinion of Rava. And the Gemara says, "V'oz Rava l'tamei." And Rava is very consistent in his opinion, because we find, what does Rava say? Rava said, the Amar Rava kos pilpuli b'Yom Kippur. If a guy goes ahead on Yom Kippur, where we know we're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur, and a guy goes ahead and he takes this pilpuli and he chews on it on Yom Kippur, and he eats it, he chews it, he sucks this peppercorn and he swallows it. Now the question is, did he violate the prohibition of eating on Yom Kippur, which carries with it the penalty called karet, that the person's cut off from his people? So did he violate the prohibition of eating on Yom Kippur? So Rava says no, that's not called eating, because this pilpuli, it's not normal to eat this type of food. It's not, and therefore it's not called eating. So in order for a person to violate the prohibition of eating on Yom Kippur, is when you eat real food. This is not food. This is a spice. This is a heavy, most probably sharp or whatever spice. It's not meant to be eaten in that stage. And therefore, the Amar of a kos pilpuli b'Yom Kippur patur. He's patur from karet. He does not get karet. Now, I just want to say, it doesn't say mutar. Rava doesn't say you're allowed to take on Yom Kippur to take a peppercorn and chew on it, and he doesn't allow you to do it. The question is whether he's chayav karet or not. Is he subject to the punishment of karet or not? That's the question. Rava says he's not subject to that punishment. But whether he's allowed to do it, Rabbi, can I go take a peppercorn on Yom Kippur and suck on it? Obviously, Rava is going to say you cannot do that. Now, zangvila. Zangvila is similar to pieces of wood that's made. It's made for also spice. They translate it most probably ginger. Let's see if they translate it ginger. Yes. If someone goes ahead and he chews ginger on B'Yom Kippur, ginger is also something that grows. It's like the root of the. It's like it's a piece of it that grows in the ground. Inside is like the root of a certain crop. And if you a lot of things, in certain recipes, they require ginger. You add to the the thing ginger. You know about that, Kiva? You know about ginger? You use ginger in certain foods. So ginger is something, but if a person takes ginger by itself on Yom Kippur, and he chews ginger on Yom Kippur, that is patur. He's also patur, just like this peppercorns, because the ginger is not normal to be eaten. It's not the normal way of eating. And since it's not the normal way of eating, so you don't really have real benefit from this peppercorns. It doesn't really give you, like the Torah says, that on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to do something, you're supposed to afflict your body, not supposed to hurt your body, but you're not supposed to enjoy certain things on Yom Kippur. You're supposed to be in a state of fasting, so to speak. And it doesn't, and food usually restores you, gives you strength and all that type of stuff, and it makes you feel better and so on and so forth. This ginger, this peppercorn, the Beis Yosef says it's not healthy. If you go ahead and you eat this peppercorn by itself, and therefore you don't violate Yom Kippur if you go ahead and eat this peppercorn, and similarly by this ginger. So therefore he's very consistent. The same way on Yom Kippur, he doesn't violate the prohibition of eating on Yom Kippur by eating this peppercorn of ginger. So too, you will not say a bracha on this peppercorn, on this spice. It's not, the Chachamim didn't answer because it's not the normal eating, it's not the normal benefit, does not require a blessing. If you want you want to go ahead and be not the usual guy who's going to go ahead and eat this peppercorn in the state. There's no obligation. Rabbi, do I say a bracha? I want to eat a peppercorn. Rabbi would say, no, you don't make a bracha. And if you do say a bracha, then it's a bracha levatala. It's a bracha in vain. Yes, Morris. Good? Okay. Meitive. So now the Gemara is going to challenge what we said until now. We're going to question the opinions of Rava and Rav Sheshes from the following. Rav Meir Omer. Rav Meir said, and this has to do with this past week's parasha that we just read in Achimot Kedoshim, this past Shabbat. Rav Meir Omer. It says in Orla, by the first 3 years.
Who's Rav Meir?
Rav Meir is one of the great rabbis of the Mishnah. Rav Meir, like Rav Meir Bal Hanes. Rav Meir.
It's Hilula today. That's amazing.
It's his Hilula today. Rav Meir is Hilula of Rav Meir Bal Hanes today, and here we have Rav Meir in the Gemara. How do you like that? Meitive, beautiful.
Where are we, Rabbi? Where are we in the page, please?
We are 36b, Lamed Vav Amud Beis. We are second wide line. Second wide line of the page. When the line started narrow, and the first time the lines get big, you have it? Meitive. You have it, Mike? Now, what does it say about early? You plant a new
Rabbi,
tree.
I'm sorry. Where is Rabbi Meir buried?
Is he buried in?
He's in Tiberias.
Tiberia, I think in Tiberia. Yes, Mike says Tiberia, correct.
Okay.
So now, the first 3 years you plant the tree, the Torah says you can't use the fruit of the tree. It's closed off. The fruit is closed off, and you can't use it. You can't benefit from the fruit of the first 3 years of a new tree. That's called Arla. And anyways, the Sefer Chinuch says generally the fruit is not good the first 3 years. The fruit doesn't produce anything well anyways. But that's the law the first 3 years of a fruit tree. Now, and then we said there's laws. The fourth year, you have to take it. If you take it to Yerushalayim, eat it, like whatever the laws are. But we're focusing now on the first 3 years of the fruit of the tree. So it says, "Mimasha shenema." The Remeir Omer, "Mimasha shenema." The pasuk says, "V'araltem orlato et pirio." You have to close off the fruit. You can't eat the fruit. You don't eat the fruit the first 3 years of the tree. And we saw last week that applies both in the land of Israel and outside the land of Israel if you plant the tree. And we saw there's a question outside the land of Israel, is planting the tree the first 3 years, the fruit prohibited biblically or rabbinically? But you can't, if you plant the tree here in New York or New Jersey, the first 3 years, the fruit, you're not allowed to use the fruit of that tree. Okay? You can't sell it, you can't have benefits, so on and so forth. Now, the pasuk says you have to close off the fruit. You can't eat the fruit. Obviously, if you're telling me, if the pasuk tells you can't eat the fruit, That means what kind of tree are we talking about? We're talking about a fruit tree. If I tell you can't eat the fruit, if I tell you can't cut the wood, then you're talking about something, maybe it's not making any fruit. If I tell you can't eat the fruit, that means we're talking about a fruit tree. So if we're talking about a fruit tree, say, so why does the pasuk say it's a tree, a food tree? The Torah identifies this tree that you planted as a food tree. There's no extra word in the Torah. If the Torah tells you that you can't eat the fruit, obviously, what type of tree are you talking about? A tree that produces food. So the Gemara's question is, why does the Torah need to tell us the word that it's a tree that produces food? It's an eitz ma'achal. The Torah identifies this tree as a food tree. You don't need to tell me it's a food tree. You tell me that you can't eat its fruit. Obviously, it's a what? A food tree.
What if you
Clear
go?
what the question is? What do you say?
What if you're going in some forest and you see fruit on a tree? How would you know if it's like 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 or 5?
So there is you might read there's something called majority. Majority of the trees are more than 3 years old. So therefore, when you go ahead and you buy fruit, you want to say, I mean, and you go
No, no.
and you
If
buy
I
fruit.
go in the let's say I go in the forest and I see a fruit tree, and I want to eat the fruit.
So I would suggest, but we'd have to look up more in detail, that when you go into a forest, there's a million trees in a forest. Most trees in the forest are more than 3 years old. So therefore, probably that's why you can rely on to say that the fruit that tree is not from the first 3 years of its planting.
And
Most
what if
trees are
what if
50 years
it
old,
wasn't?
100 years old. What?
What if it wasn't and we didn't know and we ate the fruit because we were hungry or whatever? There is a punishment for eating the orla.
If you go again, if you go after the majority, I mean, there's no punishment. If a person made a mistake and he ate arla by mistake, there's no punishment.
Okay.
He just has to, maybe he has to do tshuva. He has to say, forgive me, Hashem, I did a sin by mistake. I mean, let's say you found that afterwards that the tree was a young tree, was within the first 3 years, and then you realize you ate from the fruit of a tree that was less than 3 years, and you have to then you have to ask Hashem forgiveness that I made a mistake. I didn't realize, I didn't know, I thought I was doing the right thing. I made a mistake. Right. Anything that has the status of a tree, it would seem like all fruit trees would have this. The law is subject to the prohibition of you can't eat the fruit the first 3 years of the tree's life. Most trees last, who knows how long, 100 years, I don't know, 75 years. The first 3 years of the fruit of that tree that you planted, you can't eat the fruit.
Rabbi.
Right, so yeah, that's a good question because we know we make hadaman strawberry. So it's a good question. There's a whole tractate called, there's a whole mishnayos called Arla, and there's the Yerushalmi, I think, on Arla. There's the Jerusalem Talmud. There's no Bavli on Arla. So there's a lot of discussion on these. The details of these laws would have to be looked at. Yes, what do you say, Mike?
The question that we were talking about, what does it say in the Torah? It say a fruit tree or a food tree?
It says two things. It says a food tree, eitz ma'achal. Good morning. Have a great day. Eitz ma'achal is that it's a tree of food. Eitz ma'achal, that means it's a food tree, Food. And also the pasuk says you can't eat the fruit of this tree. So if you're telling me that you can't eat the fruit of the tree, so that automatically tells me that we're talking about a food tree. So the Gemara's question is, why morning of
Did we lost the rabbi?
what is it teaching us? So the Gemara says, Elamata maloma eitz machal.
Keep getting frozen. Rabbi. I think the rabbi got frozen again. Let's text message them.
It's cold in New York. Everybody's freezing.
You are early in the office, Mike. What's going on?
You know, got bills to pay.
Uh,
I'm joking. No, I woke up early.
where is your office? In Manhattan?
Long Island,
Where? Down in the shore or?
South Shore.
Nice.
What should we do? Should we call? Should we maybe hang up and call back?
No, I think let's text message him. Let him see. Tell him.
Because he's not gonna be able. We can connect to him. He's not. Oh, he's a host now. Hold on.
Rabbi, we couldn't hear you. First of all,
Okay,
you mute.
Yosef, you able to hear us now? Ram, you able to hear me now? Very
Yeah.
good. We're back on track. The peppercorn, it's
Wait for Mike.
the
Mike,
same thing as the tree itself. If you eat the tree, if you take the wood of the peppercorn tree, it will taste the same thing as the peppercorn itself. And that's what the pasuk is telling us. The pasuk is telling us that you might have said, he says like this, Halpelin, this peppercorn, you might have thought that you will not have to, won't be subject to the laws of Arla. Why not? You would have thought, because when these peppercorns dry out, you can't eat them. So since you can't eat them, so therefore you would have said, maybe they're not subject to Arla. Maybe it's not the normal type of fruit. The normal type of fruit, when it dries out, it's still edible. So therefore, the pasuk teaches you that eitz ma'achal, this tree, this eitz, you understand? Hear what the Gemara's language is? Eitz, the wood, is ma'achal, is the food. The wood of the tree tastes like the food itself, and it's teaching us that this peppercorn is subject to the laws of what? Of Arla. Now, so I was bothered by the question. Maybe it's talking about etro. Eitz ma'achal, the wood and the food taste the same. Eitz, that's the wood. The word eitz means wood. Ma'achal is the food. So how do we know it's talking about the peppercorn? Maybe the pasuk is talking about etro. That has the same idea that the wood and the food taste the same. So I saw a beautiful answer, because we don't need a special words of the pasuk to tell us that etrog is subject to Arla. There's no reason to say that etrog should not be subject to Arla. It's like any other fruit tree, the etrog tree, and it should be subject to Arla. The one Ariel is here, but he's hiding out he's a very tsanua, he's very modest. But we might have thought that the peppercorn is not subject to Arla because there's some deficiency in the crop. What's the deficiency in the crop of the peppercorn? Because when it gets dried out, you can't eat it. Therefore, we need the pasuk to teach you that even peppercorns are subject to the laws of Arla. That's one of the answers that they give. So that's what the Gemara says. But at the end of the day, what do we see? Peppercorns are subject to Arla. It's subject to the laws of fruit that you can't eat the fruit the first 3 years. If it's subject to Arla, so why does Rava say you don't say a bracha on peppercorn? If peppercorn, the pilpuli, this spice is subject to Arla, you're obviously considering it a fruit. If you consider it a fruit, so why is it that Rava says you don't say a bracha and the other rabbi says you say a shahako? Why say shahako? If it's subject to Arla, it should be a bar priya. That's the Gemara's question. This is a challenge on Rava and Rav Sheshes. Again, Rava and Rav Sheshes have a whole discussion about the pilpuli, about this peppercorn. Do you make a bracha or you don't? And if you do, maybe you only say a shahako. But we see that peppercorn is something that's subject to Arla. That's the Gemara's. If it's subject to Arla, it should be like any other fruit. So you should make a regular bracha on it. That's the Gemara's question. Clear? Mr. Haber, is it clear? Let's see it inside again. The Gemara says, "Ve'ezer is a pilpulin, lelandecha to teach you shapilpulin that this pilpulin is chayavin ba'orla." Right, Morris? You got it? That pilpulin is chayav ba'orla. It's subject to the laws of orla, of like any fruit tree. You can't eat this pilpulin the first 3 years that you planted this peppercorn tree. You can't eat it. You can't eat that spice the first 3 years. Ulamdecha, and also teaches us something unique about Eretz Yisrael. She'ein Eretz Yisrael chasera klum. The Holy Land has everything. The Holy Land has even the peppercorns are growing. We see from this pasuk, even peppercorns grow on the Holy Land. As we know, what the pasuk says, Shenema, as the pasuk says about Eretz Yisrael, the Torah says in Pashas Eikev that Eretz Yisrael is very, very unique. What's very unique about Mars? Are you able to hear clearly or not? What's very unique about Eretz Yisrael? Eretz asher lo b'meiskunus tocha b'lechem. The pasuk says you're not going to eat bread like a pauper in Israel. Like you just have bread and nothing else. There's a lot of other foods you're going to have in the land of Israel besides just bread. You know, a poor person, what's at his meal? Bread. That's it. Pretty much that's his meal. No, you're not going to eat bread in poverty, the Torah says. You know, when you come to the land of Israel, if you listen to the Torah, you're going to have blessings. Land with the Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people there'll be blessings. Lo sachsa kova. You're not going to be missing anything. You'll have everything in the land of Israel. Israel will have any foods that are found in any other part of the world. You'll have it in the land of Israel. It's not that you're going to be missing out. God made Israel in a way that you're going to have everything. That you're not going to be missing anything. People should not think we're missing something. We're going to be living in the land of Israel. You're going to have everything, and we'll even have the peppercorns. So we even have these peppercorns in Israel. So that's the Gemara's question is, we see from here, what do we see from here? That peppercorns are considered like a regular food. It's a regular fruit. It's subject to the laws of Orla. So how is it, if that's the case, so how is it that the Rava says you don't say a bracha on peppercorns? That's the Gemara's question. Morris, is the Gemara's question clear? Okay. Mike, is the Gemara's question clear? Yosef Atzadik, is the Gemara's question clear? Why don't you make a bracha on peppercorns if it's subject to Arla? If it's considered a fruit regarding Arla at Ariel, so why don't you say a bracha on it? That's the Gemara's question. So what's the Gemara going to answer? The Gemara is going to answer there's 2 types of peppercorns. Different case, different law. And we have a different reason. If the as Mike said before, different case, right? Mr. Haber, a different case. In America, it has to be peppercorns. Nothing should have changed. You want to look up peppercorns? Anybody want to look up peppercorns on the Google? You want to look up peppercorns? What? Akiva, you see peppercorns around anywhere? Anybody knows of peppercorns? Here. He's going to. Morris has it. What's a peppercorn? Say it out loud, Morris. What'd you say? You don't have peppercorns. Rabbi Otzkrill translated. You heard that, Mr. Haver? That's what he said. Okay. What did you say? Southeast Asia? So we got to go to Southeast Asia. That's where they find them. Most probably everything is imported today anyway. So most probably there shouldn't be a problem finding it at a certain
Rabbi, this is peppercorns.
Grocery stores.
Rabbi,
So the Gemara says the following. Lukasha. The Gemara answers. Back in the Gemara, Mr. Haber, we're going to go continue in the Gemara. Lukasha. It depends if it's moist, if it's a moist peppercorn, or if it's dried out. So when the peppercorn is still moist, then the peppercorn, that's where it's obligated in Arla. Then it's like a regular fruit of the tree. But after it dries out, then it really loses a lot of its life, a lot of its flavor. It still has flavor it has a food. It's not something that you could really eat as a food in that so much.
No beracha?
Dried out. And that's that's where Rava says you don't say a bracha on the peppercorn when it's dry. Amrle Rabbanon Merema. Rabbanon said to Merema. Rava said, "Kas zingvala biyom kippurim patu." Rava said about the ginger. Rava said about the ginger. If you now, Morris, you want to translate for everybody? Does everyone know what ginger looks like? Yes, everybody knows what ginger looks like, right? Everyone. So kas zingvala biyom kippurim. The guy Rava said, if you chewed the ginger, Ariel, right, on Yom Kippur, Patu. He didn't violate the sin of eating on Yom Kippur. If he chewed this ginger on Yom Kippur. That's what Rava says. The Gemara challenges. The Gemara says, what do you mean, Rava says, Hi Hamleta. The Asim Behan Hindevoi. Hamleta is ginger mixed with honey, mixed with let's say mixed with honey, and you crush. This is crushing the ginger, and you mix it with honey, and it comes from Kush. Some say it's from India, some say from Ethiopia, and you should know. Right. See, it's like it says in the Megillah, Mehodu, Achashverosh ruled, Mehodu v'at Kush. So generally it's translated Hodu is from India, at Kush until it's Ethiopia. That's how but there's a question here in the commentaries, what does this mean? Where did this ginger come from? Did it come from India or it came from Ethiopia? But you should know, I spoke to someone last night, and she said, a married woman, happened to my wife. She said that she looked in the cookbook. You'll see that the cookbook, when it talks about ingredients, ginger is listed on Indian types of cuisine. When you things that are Indian dishes, like there's Mexican dishes, there's Chinese dishes. In the cookbook, the Indian dishes call for ginger. And here, our Gemara, according to that opinion, the ginger here is from India. So it seems interesting that the common ingredient in an Indian dish is ginger, which seems to say that maybe it's a product of the country in India, that it grows very well. Just like in Eretz Israel has seven grapefruits of the land of Israel that we're known for. So it could be that ginger is something that's a common thing that grows in India. And here we have our Gemara talking about ginger from India. According to now, that came from India according to some interpretations. Others say it's from Ethiopia. Sharia, if they made it in India, you could eat it. You could eat this food that came from India. Now, the question is, what about the problem of the guy cooked it? The guy cooked this ginger together with, they cooked the ginger with the honey, they made this certain dish. Why isn't it a problem called bishul akum? If a guy would cook something for you, certain things, there's certain foods that if a guy cooks for you, if a person has a maid in the house, they got to be careful that the maid does not cook the food, could not cook the meat, the chicken, and so on and so forth. There's something called bishul akum. There's no problem here of bishul akum on this ginger, this ginger together with the honey. Why not? Because this ginger could be eaten. There's a rule. For anything that you could eat raw, if the guy cooks it for you, there's no problem. Meaning, if in your house, if you want to, you could drink water raw. Now, if the guy wants to put up the hot water for you, there's no problem for the guy to cook the hot water for you. Why is there no problem? Because you can have it raw. You don't need the guy. The guy is something you're not really gaining so much from the guy, because you're gaining a certain amount, but you can eat it raw. So anything that you can eat raw, right? Let's say an apple. If a guy cooks apples for you, it's not a problem because you can eat the apple raw. But chicken you can't eat raw. And if the guy would cook chicken for you, you have a problem. Even though all the ingredients are kosher and everything's kosher, it's in your own house. Correct, Mr. Haber? That's But this ginger that was cooked together with the honey is able to be, the ginger before you cooked it was able to be eaten raw. That's what the Gemara is saying. And therefore it's not a problem. It doesn't violate the problem of bishul akum. Now, what of the goy cooking? What about the problem? What do you mean? The pot that the Gentile used, and the pot that the Gentile used, maybe there was some other things that maybe the pot was not a kosher pot that he used to cook the ginger. Now, because
What about
so
sushi?
the reason is, let's say anything, if the pot would have been used, and generally if you would have used the pot, usually the pots are used every 24 hours. And after 24 hours, anything that's absorbed in a pot, in the walls of a pot, will give a negative taste to the food. That's called, we learned about that in Chulin, one of Mr. Haber's favorite Masechtas. No same time of gam. If it gives a negative taste, it will not ruin the food. So therefore, even if the pot was used for not kosher stuff beforehand,
Could you
we're
drop me at
not
a corner?
after the fact,
Thanks.
it will not give a positive flavor into this food, into this ginger. And therefore, the ginger made honey would be kosher. Just like today, if let's say you by mistake, somebody took a pot, you had a dairy pot, and you went ahead and you cooked meat in a dairy pot, okay? The pot wasn't used in 24 hours, the
She's
meat
passing anyways.
will be
Drop him
able
at the
to
corner.
eat, because we say that any flavor that was absorbed in the walls of the pot will not give, obviously the pot was clean before you made the meat in the pot. Any negative flavor that was in the pot will not affect it doesn't ruin the food. Of course, the pot, you have to kasher the pot, you have to deal with the pot, but the food will be good. So that's what the Gemara says over here. The Gemara says that this ginger that came from Ethiopia or from India, you can eat it, and we make the bracha of Borei Pri Adama on the ginger, because ginger is the root. It's not the fruit. It's the root of the, just like a carrot. A carrot is the root. So the ginger is the root, and you'll make a Borei Pri Adama on the ginger. So what do we see clearly? We see clearly that ginger is a food. You make a Borei Pri Adama on the ginger. So how could Rava say that if a guy ate ginger on Yom Kippur, that he said, and also not only that, we see that it can be eaten raw. But the fact that it's not subject to bishul akum, that it's not subject to the prohibition that the guy cooked it, the only reason why it's not forbidden because it was cooked by the Gentile is because it could have been eaten raw. That means you're telling me that ginger can be eaten raw. So how could Rava say you don't say a bracha on ginger? How could Rava say you? And how could Rava say you don't eat on Yom Kippur? If a guy ate ginger on Yom Kippur, he chewed the ginger Yom Kippur. He didn't violate Yom Kippur. If you make a bracha, if you can eat it raw, so then you should violate Yom Kippur by eating the ginger. That's the Gemara's question. And again, the Gemara says the same answer the Gemara said before. It depends if it's moist, or it depends if it's wet, or it depends if it's dry. Dry, he doesn't say the bracha, and he wouldn't violate Yom Kippur. Right. Good morning. Exactly. Good morning, Shmuel. That's what the Gemara said. Look, Kasha. One case is talking about that it's for tifta, it's moist. That's the case. If it's wet, it's moist, it's not dry. That's where you say a bracha. And that's the case. And that was the case of the ginger that they cooked. That was cooked from India, Ethiopia. It was the moist ginger, and that was what we're talking about. And that you could have eaten raw. And Habi Abeshta, but if it's dried out, then there's no, you wouldn't violate Yom Kippur. Now the Gemara says, Chavitz Kedera. Let's say you have a food made from flour, oil, and honey. Okay? You got flour, oil, and honey, and you made a nice food from that, and you cooked it. You cooked it together in a pot. V'chein daisa. Daisa is you take, it's also, you cook something, it's wheat, crushed wheat, and the Gemara will explain what any other ingredients that might be together with this crushed wheat. So we have the first case is chavetz keder is a pot with flour. You're making a food that contains, it's a thick food. The ingredients of this food, 3 ingredients, is flour, oil, and honey. That's case 1. And case 2 is some sort of crushed wheat. You didn't grind, meaning you didn't ground it into flour. Generally, you take wheat and you grind it into flour. Here, you took the wheat pieces and then you cut that. You took, let's say, the mortar and you banged on the wheat and you made the wheat into smaller pieces. And then and we'll see what else is part of this thing. Now the question: what's the bracha on these 2 items? Rabbi Yehuda Amar says shehakol niyeh b'dvaro, and the Gemara is going to explain. He says the bracha on this is shehakol. So let's focus on the first case. The first case is you have flour, honey, and oil. It says shehakol. Rav Kahana says no. If you got flour in there, you got to go ahead and say a borei minei mizonot on this. He says, and that's the halacha. You see the little letter over there? See the letter over the word base, mem, stands for that little letter that takes you to the Rambam. Borei minei mizonot. And the Gemara explains, what are they arguing? So the Gemara says, B'daisa greda kulyama lo pligi. If it's wheat that you just crushed the wheat with the mortar and you made a food out of that, everybody agrees borei minei mizonot. You say a borei minei mizonot. Ki pligi b'daisa ke'ein chavetz kedera. The argument is that if you cook the wheat the same way the chavetz kedera is that when you mixed it with honey and other things, here is you cut the wheat, you crush the wheat, and then you mixed it with honey. So now the question is, what's the bracha on crushed wheat made with honey? Is the honey the main ingredient or is the wheat the main ingredient? That is the question. So the Gemara says, and then we're going to end with this. He holds that the honey is the main thing. That the honey that's together with the flour is the main ingredient, is the main thing. And therefore, you say, and on honey, you say a shakol. What's the bracha? On a date, you say ha'etz, and on honey, you say a shakol. So he says, and now that it's mixed with flour, you say make a shakol. However, the halacha of Kana. Why? Sava smida ika. He holds that the flour is the main thing, not the honey. Amar Rav Yosef says, Kavotei Rav Kana Mistavra, like Rav Kana seems to be more logical. That's the halacha. Why? The Rav Shmuel, the Amri Tavaya, Kol sheyesh b'chamesh aminim. Any food, any type of food that you have in it, multiple ingredients, but it has in it from the 5 species. It has in it wheat, flour, spelt, oats, and rye, the 5 grains, and they're there not just to hold the food together. They're there for the purpose of giving flavor. Meaning, Tosfos points out, if it's just has to hold the food together, then you will not make a mezonot. If there's some flour in, a little bit of flour, just to hold the food together. But if it's there for the taste, even if it's a minority ingredient, but if it gives taste, and that's the purpose that you put it in there for the purpose of taste. See, then mevorchen alav borei minei mezonot. Then you say a borei minei mezonot. So that's the conclusion of the Gemara. And we'll see tomorrow. We'll continue more about this the food that mixed with when you have mezonot mixed with other ingredients about the proper bracha. Flour give taste, and it could be also if it's for the purpose of taste. Meaning, it's possible. It might be possible. Thank you, Ariel. Possibly you can give it taste, but if it's not the purpose of why you're making it, and it's just if the purpose is to hold it together, does it give it taste? Maybe it does give a certain amount of taste, but if it could be that might not play a factor. If it gives it taste, but if that's not the purpose, it's not for that purpose. Meaning, when you put wheat together with the honey, you want the taste of the wheat. You're interested in the taste of the wheat. So even if it's a minority ingredient, it's 30%, 70-30, you still say a borei minei mezonot. But what about if you have some 30, you're putting in the flour not for the taste, but it gives a taste, but you're not interested in that taste. So then you're interested because you're interested in the other thing. Then I presume it will not take the mezonot, because the purpose of the item is not for that taste. Meaning, are we gonna say when you put flour in a thing to hold it together, it doesn't give taste? It could still possibly give taste, but that's not, it's giving, most probably, it's not there for that purpose, and most probably it's not giving a very significant, most probably. We'll have to see more as we go along. We're just touching the surface. Have a great day. Welcome back. Thank you. Have a great
Have
day.
a great day, Rabbi. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great day, everybody. All the best, everybody.
Take care, Mayor. Thank you.